The command chamber of the Karthix Dominion did not allow for decoration. It did not need it. Power, when absolute, did not decorate itself. The walls were a seamless alloy of darkened metal, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No insignias. No banners. No symbols of pride. The Dominion did not celebrate victory. It assumed it. At the center of the chamber stood a circular table carved from the crust of a collapsed world. A planet that had resisted, briefly, before being reduced to raw material. The table remained as a reminder, not of conquest, but of inevitability. Supreme Executor Threx Valen stood at its edge. He did not sit. He never did. He was taller than any being in the room by a measurable margin, his frame reinforced with layered bioalloy plating that shifted subtly with each movement, like something alive deciding how best to remain unbreakable. His eyes burned with a steady amber glow, not bright, not aggressive, simply constant. Like a star that had never once considered the possibility of going out. Behind him, the chamber lights dimmed automatically, adjusting to his presence. It was not programmed. It had learned. No one spoke until he did. There were 32 officers in the room, each responsible for sectors that had once been independent civilizations. Each had commanded fleets, led invasions, overseen assimilation protocols across systems that had names once, names that no longer mattered. They stood in silence. Not because they were afraid. Because there was nothing to say that had not already been calculated. Threx Valen had led 21 expansion campaigns. He had not lost a single one. Not a stalemate. Not a delay. Not even a miscalculation large enough to record. Entire species had attempted resistance. Some with technology that, on paper, exceeded the Dominion's own capabilities. Some with alliances. Some with desperation strong enough to resemble courage. None of it had changed the outcome. The Dominion did not win through force alone. It won through certainty. Threx finally spoke. Next system. 2 words. That was all it took to begin the meeting. At the far end of the chamber, strategist Vare adjusted the projection field. A sphere of light formed above the table, resolving into a star system, small, unremarkable, orbiting a standard yellow star. Several planets. One habitable. Blue. Green. Alive. The system rotated slowly in the air between them. Designation, Sol, 3 system, Vare said. His voice was precise, stripped of inflection. Catalogued by the Conclave Registry 62 cycles ago. Classified as low priority. Threx did not respond immediately. He observed. Not the planet. The data. Assessment. Vare expanded the projection. Layers of information unfolded: population density, industrial output, energy signatures, orbital infrastructure. Civilian vessels marked in soft blue. Trade routes faintly visible. Military presence was minimal. Dominant species, human, Vare continued. Technological development consistent with early interplanetary expansion. Limited off-world infrastructure. No confirmed deep space military capacity. The pause. Vorlon Index rating, 2. There was a shift in the room. Subtle. Not surprise. Something closer to dismissal. The Vorlon Index was not debated. It was not interpreted. It was accepted. A scale from 1 to 12. 1 meant harmless. 12 meant untouchable. 2 meant irrelevant. A species that had discovered conflict but not yet understood how to weaponize it beyond itself. A species capable of violence, but not of war. Threx's gaze moved briefly across the officers. No one objected. No one questioned. Why would they? A 2 had never required more than procedure. Time frame, Threx said. Not a question. A parameter. Vare did not hesitate. Estimated full system acquisition, 11 rotations. The beat. No reaction. 11 rotations was efficient. Not rushed. Not delayed. Appropriate. Threx nodded once. The decision was made. Around the table, officers began updating their internal displays. Fleet assignments. Entry vectors. Resource projections. Post-acquisition restructuring. Routine. Predictable. Already solved. Threx allowed himself one final glance at the projection. The blue-green planet turned slowly in the artificial light. Quiet, unaware, unprepared. A system that did not yet understand it had already been measured and found insufficient. Proceed, he said. And just like that, the fate of an entire world was decided. The projection expanded. What had been a distant system became detailed, dissected, understood. Layers of analysis unfolded across the chamber. Orbital paths, communication networks, industrial clusters, population density mapped in soft pulses of light. The blue-green planet rotated at the center, no longer mysterious. Now it was data. And data could be conquered. Primary population concentration, Vare said, isolating the planet. Surface-based civilization. Limited orbital habitation. Approximately 8 billion individuals, unevenly distributed across landmasses. Clusters of light flared across continents. That's right. Vulnerable. Energy infrastructure is planetary, he continued. Dependent on localized grids. No unified defensive network. No planetary shielding. No deep space perimeter. One of the officers, Commander Reth, let out a quiet breath through his nose. Not quite amusement. Not quite boredom. Primitive, he said. Not as an insult. As a classification. Vare continued without acknowledging it. Civilian fleet consists of approximately 400 registered vessels. Cargo, transport, and research classifications. No confirmed warships above Class 3. The projection shifted again. Small icons appeared in orbit, tiny compared to the Dominion fleet markers. Fragile, uncoordinated, unthreatening. Military capability? Threx asked. Fragmented, Vare replied. Multiple sovereign states. Independent command structures. Limited cooperation. Weapons are surface-based with minimal orbital reach. No unified doctrine. Another pause. Then, almost as an afterthought, they engage in conflict primarily with each other. That drew a faint reaction. Not interest. Recognition. A species still fighting itself had not yet learned to fight anything else. The Vorlon Index did not assign numbers lightly. It measured capacity, not potential. And everything here aligned perfectly with it too. Commander Reth stepped closer to the table, studying the rotating world. They've had 62 cycles since initial registry, he said. No significant change? None that affects classification, Vare replied. Technological progression is steady but contained. No indicators of accelerated militarization. No anomalies? Another officer asked. Vare paused just briefly. None recorded in official conclave data. That was enough. Official data was what mattered. The Dominion did not operate on speculation. It operated on verified reality. Threx finally moved. Not much, just a slight shift of posture, but it drew attention immediately. Entry point, he said. The projection adjusted. A marker appeared at the outer edge of the system. Fleet will emerge here, Vare said. Standard formation. Initial broadcast upon arrival. Advance toward primary population centers. Lines traced inward from the system's edge, converging on the blue-green planet. Direct. Efficient. Resistance projections? Threx asked. Minimal, Vare answered. Localized engagement at most. Estimated collapse of organized resistance within one rotation of planetary contact. A few officers exchanged brief glances. Not concern. Just confirmation. This was not a campaign. This was a procedure. Casualty projections? Threx continued. Statistically negligible, Vare said. That settled it. Around the table, officers began finalizing deployment sequences. Fleet groupings adjusted in real time. Command hierarchies locked in. Resource extraction protocols queued for activation after planetary acquisition. The rhythm of it was familiar. Almost mechanical. A system was identified. Measured. Classified. Then absorbed. No emotion. No hesitation. No uncertainty. The blue-green world continued to turn at the center of the projection. Cloud patterns drifted across its surface. Oceans reflected light. Civilian satellites moved in slow, predictable orbits. Active, complex, unaware. Commander Reth tilted his head slightly. They don't look like it too, he said. It wasn't doubt. Just observation. Vare responded immediately. Visual complexity does not correlate with threat level. Reth nodded once. Of course. The scale accounted for everything that mattered. And what mattered was simple. Capability. Reach. Intent. Humans had none that extended beyond their own system. Which meant they were contained. Which meant they were safe to conquer. Threx's gaze remained fixed on the planet. Not studying it. Not questioning. Simply acknowledging it as the next step. A task. Already solved. Preparation window? He asked. Fleet ready within 1 rotation, Vare said. Full deployment within 3. Threx considered that for less than a second. Unnecessary delay, he said. A slight shift in the room. Adjustments were made instantly. Fleet departs within half rotation, Vare corrected. Better. Faster. More aligned with expectation. The Dominion did not wait when waiting served no purpose. And here, there was no purpose. The projection dimmed slightly as final confirmations locked in across the command network. Signals moved outward from the chamber, through the station, into the waiting fleet beyond. 600 ships. Each one built for conquest. Each one part of a system that had never failed. Outside the command station, engines began to wake. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a steady increase in energy output, like something stretching after a long period of stillness. Inside the chamber, no one reacted. Because this was routine. Because this was certain. Because the number was 2. And 2 had never been a problem. Threx Valen turned away from the projection. The meeting was over. The outcome had already been decided. Behind him, the blue-green planet continued to rotate in silence. Still calm. Still small. Still completely understood. The meeting should have ended there. It almost did. Commands had been issued. Timelines set. The system marked for acquisition. Officers were already turning away from the table, their attention shifting toward execution. Routine. Predictable. Finished. Executor. The word was quiet. Not sharp. Not urgent. But it stopped the room. Not because it was loud. Because it wasn't. 32 officers paused. No one interrupted a concluded directive. No one added to a solved equation. Slowly, Threx Valen turned his head. The speaker stood near the outer edge of the chamber, partially outside the central light field. Subcommander Lyris Kale. She was not the highest-ranking officer present. Not the most decorated. Not the most visible. She had a narrow frame, precise posture, and the kind of stillness that suggested she spent more time observing than speaking. Her uniform bore the markings of reconnaissance command, long-range observation, pattern analysis, peripheral assignments. Not frontline command. Not decision authority. She should not have spoken. Threx regarded her for a moment. Not with irritation. With assessment. Yes, he said. Just acknowledgement. Nothing more. Lyris stepped forward, just enough to be fully within the projection light. I request a delay, she said. The room did not react immediately. But something changed. The silence shifted. Not tension. Something sharper. Disapproval without expression. Duration? Threx asked. Still calm. Still neutral. 90 rotations, Lyris said. That did it. A faint sound moved through the chamber, barely audible. The kind of sound that existed just at the edge of control. 90 rotations. For a system rated 2. It wasn't just excessive. It was irrational. Strategist Vare spoke before anyone else could. On what basis? He asked. Not aggressive. Precise. Lyris did not hesitate. I was stationed near the Sol system perimeter for 4 cycles, she said. Trade observation assignment. Civilian traffic monitoring. Vare nodded once. Acknowledged. Irrelevant. Your findings were included in the conclave registry, he said. No anomalies were reported. I know what was reported, Lyris replied. The pause. I am referring to what was not. That drew attention. Real attention. Threx's gaze sharpened slightly. Clarify. Lyris took a breath. Not uncertainty. Preparation. Their communication patterns, she said. Civilian channels. Cargo pilots. Station control. Routine exchanges. Vare frowned slightly. That data was reviewed, he said. It indicated standard. They are too calm, Lyris interrupted. Silence. Absolute. The kind that forms when something incorrect has been said in a room that does not tolerate incorrect things. Vare stared at her. Calm, he repeated. Yes. That is your concern? Lyris held his gaze. It is not natural, she said. Not for a species at that stage of development. Not for independent operators managing complex systems without centralized oversight. Vare's expression did not change. Your statement lacks measurable parameters. It lacks explanation, Lyris corrected. Not evidence. A subtle shift. Now the room was listening. Not agreeing. Listening. They do not behave like a species that is uncertain, she continued. There is no hesitation in their communication. No inefficiency in response time. No escalation under pressure. Even in civilian channels. Commander Reth crossed his arms slightly. You are suggesting discipline, he said. I am suggesting training, Lyris replied. Reth gave a small, dismissive tilt of his head. Based on cargo pilots. Based on consistency, Lyris said. Threx spoke, cutting through the exchange. Did you observe unregistered military vessels? No. Unlogged weapon systems? No. Any activity contradicting their classification? Lyris paused. Just for a fraction of a second. The room felt it. No. Threx held her gaze. Unblinking. Then he said the word that ended it. Speculation. It landed clean. Final. Lyris didn't respond immediately. Because there was nothing to respond with. Not in this room. Not under this system. We do not delay fleet deployment based on perception, Threx continued. The Vorlon Index exists to eliminate uncertainty. It measures what is visible, Lyris said quietly. Threx tilted his head slightly. And what is not visible, he replied, does not affect outcome. That was it. The equation closed. Around the room, officers began to disengage again. The moment was over. The system had corrected itself. Lyris stood still. She knew what had just happened. She had seen it before. The difference between a room that considered and a room that concluded. This room had concluded before she spoke. So, she tried once more. Executor, she said. Threx did not turn this time. Yes. If the data is incomplete. It is not, he said. Not harsh. Not raised. Just absolute. Lyris stopped. Because there was nothing left to say that would exist within the boundaries of this room. Threx finally turned fully away from her. The fleet departs as scheduled, he said. File your objection through standard channels if you require record. Dismissal. Professional. Final. Lyris inclined her head. Understood. She stepped back into the shadow at the edge of the chamber. Invisible again. The officers resumed movement. The projection faded. Commands finalized. The meeting ended. And with it, the last chance to question the outcome before it began. Lyris remained where she was for a moment after the room cleared. The chamber felt larger without the others. Quieter. But not empty. The projection of the Sol system still hovered faintly above the table, its light dimmed but not fully gone. The blue-green planet turned slowly. Exactly as before. Unchanged. Unthreatening. Correctly classified. She watched it. Not as data. Not as a target. As a problem. A problem she could not define. Which made it worse. After a moment, she turned and left the chamber. The corridor outside was active, officers moving, systems updating, the station shifting into deployment state. Everything was proceeding. Exactly as it should. Lyris walked past it all without slowing. Inside her mind, something continued to turn. Not fear. Not doubt. Something closer to misalignment. Like a calculation that had produced the correct answer, but still felt wrong. She reached her station, sat down, and opened a private file. Objection to deployment, she typed. Then paused, for a long moment, before continuing. The fleet departed on schedule. It always did. There was no ceremony, no announcement, no spectacle. 600 Dominion vessels disengaged from the command station in perfect synchronization, their engines igniting in controlled silence. No wasted motion. No deviation. They did not rush. They did not need to. Speed was not how the Dominion won. Precision was. From the observation deck of her assigned vessel, Subcommander Lyris Kale watched the formation take shape. Lines of ships extending into darkness. Order imposed on space itself. Each vessel knew its position. Each movement calculated before it occurred. The fleet did not assemble. It resolved. Like an equation reaching its inevitable answer. She had seen this before. Many times. And every time, the result had been the same. Victory. Her console lit with deployment confirmations. Navigation vectors locked. FTL corridors calculated. Communication networks synchronized across the fleet. Everything aligned. Everything correct. Still, something felt wrong. Not in the data. The data was perfect. In the absence of something she could not define. Jump in 10 seconds, the ship's tactical officer announced. The voice was steady. Routine. Lyris said nothing. She kept her eyes on the stars outside the viewport. Still, silent. Waiting. There was always a moment before a jump. A fraction of time where everything paused. Not physically, but perceptually. As if the universe itself was acknowledging the transition. Movement. Not forward. Not backward. Something else. Space bent. Light fractured. The stars stretched into lines and vanished. For an instant, there was nothing. Everything returned. Different. The fleet emerged at the outer boundary of the Sol system. Exactly where the calculations said it would. 600 ships, reassembling in formation as if they had never left. No collisions. No drift. No error. Perfect. Lyris immediately shifted to her sensor array. The system appeared. Gas giants first, massive, slow-moving bodies dominating the outer regions. Rings of debris. Fields of rock and ice. Further, the asteroid belt. Active. Mining operations visible as faint flickers of industrial output. And beyond, the inner planets. And there it was. The blue-green world. Orbiting calmly at a precise distance from its star. Unchanged. Unaware. Everything matched the registry. Exactly. Full system scan. Came the command from the bridge. Sensors expanded outward. Sweeping. Mapping. Confirming. Lyris watched the data scroll across her display. No anomalies. No hidden signatures. No unexpected energy spikes. Just what had been recorded. What had been verified. What had been trusted. Scan complete, the tactical officer reported. No deviations from conclave data. Of course not. There never were. Begin approach, Supreme Executor Threx Valen ordered. Across the fleet, engines adjusted. 600 ships began to move inward. Not aggressively. Not urgently. Just forward. Like gravity pulling them toward a conclusion. Lyris tracked civilian activity. Cargo vessels continued along their routes. Station traffic remained consistent. No panic. No deviation. No signs that the system even understood what had just arrived at its edge. They haven't detected us yet, one of the bridge officers said. Unlikely, another replied. Detection range at this scale is unavoidable. Which meant they knew. Still, nothing changed. That was unusual, but not alarming. Not yet. Prepare standard broadcast, Threx said. The command moved instantly across the fleet. Communication arrays aligned. Signal amplification systems activated. The message was loaded. A declaration used across 17 successful campaigns. Refined. Perfected. Effective. Lyris had heard it before. Every conquered world had heard it before. The wording was simple, efficient, final. Surrender your biosphere. You have been assessed. Your capacity for resistance has been evaluated. Comply with incoming directives and your population will be preserved. No threats. No emotion. Just reality. Broadcast in 3, 1. The signal went out. Across every frequency. Every channel. Every receiver capable of understanding it. A message impossible to ignore. Silence. The fleet continued its steady advance. No response. Not unusual. Some species froze. Some panicked. Some tried to respond and failed. Silence was common. Lyris watched her timer. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Still nothing. The system remained unchanged. Ships moving. Stations operating. The planet turning. 20 seconds. A signal. Incoming. Single source. Audio channel. No encryption. No distortion. Put it through, Threx said. The voice that filled the command deck was human. Not controlled calm. Not forced calm. Real calm. Copy that, the voice said. A brief pause. Give us a moment. The transmission ended. Silence returned. On the bridge, no one spoke. Because there was nothing to say. The message was unusual, but not threatening, not defiant. Strange. Commander Reth gave a small, dismissive exhale. They're stalling, he said. Standard behavior. Another officer nodded, attempting to organize response. Or negotiate, someone added. Threx remained still, unmoved. Continue approach, he said. And so they did. The fleet advanced. Distance closed. Minutes passed. Nothing changed. No defensive formations. No military mobilization. No emergency broadcasts. Normal activity. Lyris felt it again. That same misalignment. Stronger now. Not because of what she was seeing. Because of what she wasn't. They should be reacting, she said quietly. No one responded. Her console remained clear. No new contacts. No hidden signals. No indication of anything beyond what had already been confirmed. And yet, that voice. Give us a moment. Not fear. Not desperation. Not negotiation. A request. Casual. Almost polite. As if the situation were under control. As if the outcome were not in question. Lyris stared at the sensor feed. Everything looked exactly right. Which meant something was wrong. The fleet continued forward. The system remained calm. And somewhere, in the dark beyond the sensors, something was waiting. Time passed. Not much. Just enough to feel longer than it was. The Dominion fleet continued its steady advance into the Sol system, engines humming in controlled synchronization, weapons systems idling but ready, sensors sweeping the same empty data again and again. Everything remained normal. Lyris watched her display. Nothing new. No contacts. No anomalies. No reason for that voice. Status unchanged, the tactical officer reported. Confirmed, another replied. Continue advance, Threx said. Unmoved. Certain. Minutes stretched. 7. 9. The blue-green planet grew slightly larger on the forward displays. Still quiet. Still defenseless. Still. 2. At exactly 11 minutes after the broadcast, Lyris's sensor board exploded with light. Not gradually. Not in sequence. All at once. Contacts. The word cut through the bridge. Immediate. How many? Reth demanded. Lyris was already scanning. Her eyes moved across the data faster than the system could organize it. 200. She stopped, recalculated. 214. Silence. Not confusion. Because that number did not belong here. Source. Threx said. Everywhere, Lyris replied. And it was true. The contacts were not approaching from outside the system. They were already inside. Rising. Appearing. From places that had been empty. From behind the gas giants, where gravitational shadows masked signatures. From within the asteroid belt, where dense mineral interference had hidden mass. From dead space between orbital paths, regions that had been scanned, confirmed, and dismissed as nothing. They hadn't arrived. They had been there. The entire time. Waiting. The tactical display struggled to keep up. Mass readings spiked. Energy signatures resolved. Shapes formed. Lyris zoomed in on one of the contacts. And stopped breathing. "That's not possible," someone whispered. The ship was massive. Not fast. Not sleek. Not elegant. It was heavy. Dense in a way that made the sensors hesitate, as if unsure how to interpret what they were seeing. Its structure didn't read like layered armor. It read like solid mass. As if the entire ship had been built with one purpose. To endure. Classification? Ref asked. "No match," Lyris said instantly. "No registry ID. No conclave signature. No recorded design architecture." Her voice tightened, just slightly. "They don't exist." And yet, there they were. 214 of them. All pointed directly at the Dominion fleet. A transmission cut in. Same channel. Same clarity. Same voice. "Put it through," Threx said. The human voice returned. Unchanged. Not louder. Not sharper. Exactly the same as before. "You're looking at the Terran Deep Fleet," she said. No pride. No threat. Just information. 61 years in the making. The pause. Not dramatic. Measured. "We've been waiting." Silence. Absolute. Across the Dominion Bridge, no one spoke. Because there was nothing in their training for this. Nothing in the Vorlon Index. Nothing in 17 successful campaigns. Did not exist. Lyris's mind moved fast. Faster than fear. Faster than shock. Calculating. Reframing. Understanding. 61 years. That meant they had started building before they could even reach beyond their system. Before they knew who was coming. Before they knew if anyone was coming. They hadn't reacted. They had prepared. Quietly. Completely. Perfectly. "Executor," Reth said, his voice lower now. Different. Threx did not respond immediately. His eyes moved across the tactical display. One contact. Then another. Then another. 214 ships. Unregistered. Undetected. Unaccounted for. The number 2 hovered in his mind. He reached for the Vorlon file. Opened it. Looked at the classification. Then he looked back at the sensor board. At the ships. At the undeniable reality sitting in front of him. For the first time, the number meant nothing. Lyris's hands moved across her console. Not in panic. In preparation. She opened a file she had started before departure. Exit vectors. Emergency retreat paths. She had created them quietly. Privately. Because she had not trusted the math. But she updated them. Behind her, the Dominion fleet held formation. 600 ships. Still powerful. Still dangerous. Still completely unprepared. The human fleet did not advance. Did not scatter. Did not react. They held position. Perfectly still. Like something that had already solved the problem in front of it. And was simply waiting. For the next step. The silence stretched. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Unfamiliar. Threx finally spoke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Controlled. Battle formation. The command moved across the fleet. Immediate. Reflexive. 600 ships adjusted position. Weapons systems powered up. Targeting arrays locked. The Dominion responded the only way it knew how. With force. Across the void, the Terran Deep Fleet did not move. Not yet. They didn't need to. Because they had already done the most important thing. They had changed the equation. Completely. And there was no going back. The distance between the two fleets closed. Slowly. Deliberately. 600 Dominion warships, perfect formation, perfect discipline, advancing with the confidence of a force that had never needed to doubt itself. 214 human vessels. Still waiting. Not adjusting. Not reacting. That was the first thing that felt wrong. "They're not forming defensive lines," Commander Reth said. "They already have one," Lyris replied quietly. No one responded to that, because no one wanted to consider what it meant. Targeting solutions ready, the tactical officer announced. Across the Dominion fleet, weapon systems came online in perfect synchronization. Energy levels surged. Firing coordinates locked. 600 ships. All aimed. All ready. Threx Valen watched the display. He had done this before. 17 times. The first strike was always decisive. Overwhelming force. Break resistance before resistance could form. End the battle before it began. Fire. The order moved instantly. The void lit up. A wall of energy surged forward, beams, plasma arcs, kinetic strikes, perfectly coordinated, converging on the Terran fleet. A first strike that had shattered civilizations. That had ended wars before they could start. It hit. Directly. No evasion. No countermaneuver. The Terran ships took it. And for a fraction of a second, everything looked normal. Explosions. Impact flares. Energy dispersal across hull surfaces. 3 ships at the front of the Terran line took full contact. Their silhouettes vanished behind the blast. Direct hits confirmed, the tactical officer said. The light faded. 2 of the ships were still there. Moving. One had slowed, drifting slightly, but its weapons were still active. Still firing. Lyris leaned forward. That's not possible. Ships did not survive that level of concentrated fire. Not once. Not twice. Not that. They're absorbing it, she said. No, Reth snapped. Nothing absorbs that. But the data said otherwise. The Terran ships hadn't deflected the attack. They hadn't avoided it. They had endured it. The humans fired. No warning. No build-up. No dramatic charge. Execution. Lyris's sensors barely registered the firing sequence. No massive energy spike. No obvious discharge pattern. 6 Dominion ships vanished. Not damaged. Not breaking apart. Gone. One moment they existed, fully operational, fully crewed. Empty space. Debris expanding outward where structure had been. Silence hit the bridge. Heavy. Immediate. Report. Reth demanded. Lyris was already scanning. No distress signals, she said. No system failure logs. No escape pods. Her voice tightened. They didn't have time. Threx's eyes moved across the display. 6 ships. Erased. Instantly. Without warning. Without resistance. Without This was not how battles worked. Return fire, Threx said. His voice was still controlled. But something had changed. The Dominion fleet responded instantly. A second wave of attacks launched. More focused. More aggressive. More precise. This time, targeting individual ships. Concentrated fire. Overwhelming force. The Terran fleet moved. For the first time. Not as a formation. As something else. They didn't advance. They didn't retreat. They shifted. Breaking apart. Reforming. Flowing. Like liquid adjusting to pressure. They're splitting into groups, the tactical officer said. Not groups, Lyris corrected. Her eyes tracked the movement. Patterns forming and dissolving in real time. They're adapting. Each Terran cluster moved independently. But not randomly. They slipped between Dominion firing lanes. Avoided crossfire zones. Positioned themselves where Dominion ships couldn't effectively respond. Angles that should not exist. But did. How are they predicting targeting vectors? Reth demanded. No one answered. Because the answer was worse than any explanation. They weren't predicting. They were already ahead. Executor, the tactical officer said. Casualty report. The pause. 17 ships lost. The number landed differently. Heavier. Because it came too fast. Too early. Threx said nothing. His gaze remained locked on the battle display. Analyzing. Recalculating. Refusing. To accept what it meant. They're targeting command vessels, Lyris said. Everyone turned. What? Reth snapped. She highlighted several engagements. Dominion ships under concentrated attack. Not random. Not distributed. Specific. These ships are central nodes, she said. Command relays. Tactical coordinators. How would they know that? Reth demanded. Lyris didn't answer immediately. Because she already knew. They studied us. Silence. Uncomfortable. They knew what we would bring, she continued. They knew how we would fight. And built for it, she finished. Another Dominion ship disappeared. Then two more. Precise. Efficient. Targeted. They're not trying to break the fleet, Lyris said. Her voice was steady now. They're dismantling it. Threx finally spoke again. Reform lines, he ordered. Tighten formation. Increase defensive overlap. The fleet responded. Ships moved closer. Weapons recalibrated. Defense systems layered. The Dominion adjusted. Because that was what it did. It adapted. It corrected. It won. The Terran fleet responded instantly. Not reacting. Anticipating. They shifted again. Closing in. Not rushing. Not forcing. Positioning. Like something that already knew where the battle would end. And was guiding everything toward it. Another report came in. 31 ships lost. Lyris closed her eyes briefly. Not in fear. In confirmation. The math had changed. Irreversibly. The Dominion had entered this system as the stronger force. That was no longer true. And everyone on the bridge knew it. Even if no one said it. Across the void, the Terran Deep Fleet continued to move. Precise. Unstoppable in a way that had nothing to do with speed or aggression. They were not overpowering the Dominion. They were outlasting it. Outthinking it. Outpreparing it. And for the first time in his entire command history, Supreme Executor Threx Valen was not controlling the battle. He was inside it. The battle did not explode into chaos. That was the first thing Threx Valen understood. It should have. 600 ships engaging an unknown fleet should have produced disorder, unpredictable movement, fragmented responses, breakdowns in coordination. Instead, the Terran fleet moved with structure. Not visible structure. Not formation. Something deeper. A system. Update tactical model, Threx said. The command fed into the Dominion's central combat processor, a system refined over centuries of war, trained on thousands of engagements, capable of predicting enemy behavior with near-perfect accuracy. It processed the Terran movements, analyzed trajectories, mapped probabilities, then returned the result. Model instability detected. That had never happened before. Clarify, Threx said. Enemy behavior does not conform to predictive patterns. Lyris spoke before anyone else could. They're not following doctrine. They are following one, Threx replied. His eyes narrowed slightly. It's just not one we recognize. Lyris expanded her sensor analysis. Not focusing on weapons. Not focusing on movement. On structure. What she saw made something inside her settle into place. A realization she had been approaching since before the fleet arrived. They built everything to fail, she said. No one understood. So she clarified. They expect systems to break, she continued. They expect damage. Plus, disruption. She pulled up internal scans of a Terran vessel, fragmented data, incomplete, but enough. Redundant engines. Redundant power grids. Redundant targeting systems. Structural reinforcement distributed across the entire hull. She paused. They didn't build ships to avoid destruction. She looked at the others. They built them to continue functioning during it. Another Terran ship took a direct hit. A Dominion strike. Precise, powerful, accurate. The kind that should have split it apart. The ship shuddered. Energy rippled across its surface. One section went dark. It kept moving. Kept firing. Like the damage didn't matter. Because it didn't. They're inefficient, Reth said suddenly. Everyone turned. They're overbuilt, he continued. Too heavy. Too slow. Too resource-intensive. He pointed at the display. No species builds like this. It's wasteful. Lyris shook her head. No, she said. It's intentional. And in that moment, the pattern became clear. Other species optimize for performance, Lyris said. Weapons first. Efficiency. Maximum output with minimal cost. She gestured toward the Terran fleet. They optimized for survival. Silence. Understanding. Because that difference changed everything. They didn't build for war, she said. They built for losing war. No one spoke. Because that sentence was worse than anything else she could have said. Threx's mind moved quickly now. Faster than before. Reconstructing. Reframing. 61 years. That number returned. Not as information. As context. They hadn't just built ships. They had built a philosophy. A doctrine. A way of thinking that assumed failure plus inevitability. And instead of fearing it, they had engineered around it. They expected us, Threx said quietly. Not as a question. As a conclusion. Lyris nodded. Yes. Another report came in. 48 ships lost. The number was climbing. Not slowly. Not steadily. Accelerating. They knew what we would do, Threx continued. They studied our formations. Our targeting priorities. Our command structures. He looked at the battle. They built answers. And suddenly, everything made sense. Why the ships were so dense. Why they moved the way they did. Why they didn't react. Why they waited. They weren't responding to the Dominion. They were executing a plan that had been written long before the Dominion arrived. Lyris spoke again. Quiet, but clear. They didn't need to know it was us. Threx looked at her. She met his gaze. They just needed to know that someone would come. That was the difference. The Dominion conquered worlds because it was powerful. Humans had prepared for invasion because they were not. And in that imbalance, they had created something far more dangerous than strength. Certainty. They built for the worst-case scenario, Lyris said. And now, she looked at the battlefield. At the Dominion fleet losing ships faster than it could adapt. At the Terran vessels moving with calm, deliberate precision. We are it. Another Terran strike. Another Dominion ship gone. No delay. No hesitation. No wasted motion. They don't need to win quickly, Lyris said. They just need to not lose. Threx understood. Fully. Completely. For the first time, the Dominion was not facing a weaker species. Or an equal one. It was facing a species that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. And had already accounted for every move he would make. Which meant, the outcome was not being decided now. It had been decided 61 years ago. Threx Valen did not panic. He did not hesitate. He adapted. That was what had made him undefeated. Not strength. Not aggression. Correction. Every battle was a system. Every system had variables. And variables could be adjusted. They had to be. Split the fleet, he ordered. No delay. No discussion. 3 attack vectors. Flank pressure on both sides. Force them to divide response. The commands spread instantly. 600 ships became 500, then reorganized into 3 massive groups, breaking apart the rigid Dominion formation for the first time since entering the system. It was a calculated risk, but necessary. The Terrans were controlling the flow of engagement. That had to change. The Dominion fleet moved. 3 vectors. 3 angles. 3 simultaneous strikes. A maneuver designed to overwhelm predictive models, because it created too many variables at once. For a moment, it worked. The Terran fleet reacted. Not instantly. Not perfectly. There was a shift. A slight delay. A recalibration. They're adjusting, Ref said. There was something in his voice. Not confidence. Relief. Finally, a reaction. Press the attack, Threx said. And the Dominion did. Weapons surged. 3 angles of concentrated fire, collapsing inward toward the Terran formation. A classic pressure maneuver. Divide. Overwhelm. The Terran fleet responded. And the moment passed. They didn't split. They didn't retreat. They collapsed inward. Not in panic. In design. The entire formation tightened. compressing into a denser structure that absorbed the multi-angle attack instead of being broken by it. "They're reducing surface exposure," Lyris said. Her voice was calm, because she already understood. By tightening formation, they're increasing defensive overlap. "We're hitting reinforced zones." Another barrage struck. More Terran ships took direct impact. More damage registered, but fewer ships went down. The formation held. "Loss report," Threx said. 31 ships lost," the tactical officer replied. The pause. Then quieter. "Dominion losses, 22. It wasn't enough. The Dominion had adapted. The Terrans had adapted faster. Threx adjusted again. "Pull back to long-range engagement." Another shift. The fleet widened. Distance increased. Weapons recalibrated for maximum range. The idea was simple. If close-range engagement favored Terran durability, distance would favor Dominion precision. The fleet pulled back and opened fire. Long-range strikes cut across the void. Accurate, measured, relentless. For a moment, it worked. Terran ships slowed. Movement patterns adjusted. A few targets dropped. "Effective range established," Reth said. There it was again. That almost confidence. The Terrans returned fire. The Dominion sensors lit up. Range indicators spiked. Trajectory calculations updated. Then updated again. "They're firing from beyond optimal range," the tactical officer said. "No," Lyris corrected. Her eyes locked on the data. "They're firing from beyond our range." Silence. Another Dominion ship vanished. Then another. And another. Each one struck from distances the Dominion weapons could not match. Precise. Unavoidable. Unfair. "Adjust range again." Reth snapped. But there was nowhere left to go. Pull back further, and they would lose control of the battlefield entirely. And they would continue taking losses. "They're hurting us," Lyris said. No one argued. Because now, it was obvious. Every movement, every adjustment, every attempt to regain control was being anticipated, countered, turned into advantage. "They're not reacting," she continued. "They're guiding." Threx stood still, watching, calculating, predicting, the conclusion forming in his mind. "Forward push," he said suddenly. The room turned. "That will put us back into close-range engagement," Reth warned. "Yes." Threx's eyes never left the display. "We break through the center," he said. "Concentrated force. Maximum output. No fragmentation." The pause. "We overwhelm them." It was the oldest tactic in warfare. When complexity failed, you simplified. When adaptation failed, you forced. The Dominion fleet surged forward. All remaining ships. One direction. One objective. One overwhelming strike aimed at the heart of the Terran formation. For a moment, the battlefield cleared. Lines formed. Vectors aligned. Power concentrated. And for a brief, dangerous instant, it looked like it might work. The Terran fleet began to open. Not breaking. Not scattering. Opening. Like a path. "They're falling back," Reth said. "Too quickly. Too hopeful." Lyris leaned forward. Her voice low. "No." The corridor widened. A gap formed at the center of the Terran formation. Inviting. Unprotected. "Push through," Threx ordered. And the Dominion fleet did. Hundreds of ships driving forward into the opening. Into the heart of the Terran formation. 6 seconds. It worked. The formation closed. The Terran fleet shifted inward from both sides. Perfectly timed. Perfectly positioned. The corridor collapsed. And the Dominion fleet found itself inside. "We've been surrounded," Lyris said. Too late. The Terran ships fired. From both sides. From above. From below. Angles overlapping. Ranges optimized. No escape vectors. The Dominion fleet had not broken through. It had walked directly into the trap. And the trap closed. The trap did not snap shut with noise. It closed with precision. From every direction, Terran fire converged, tight, controlled, unavoidable. Dominion ships, once part of an unstoppable force, now filled a space that had been designed for their destruction. They didn't scatter. They couldn't. Behind them, the corridor had sealed. Ahead of them, Terran vessels held position at exact distances, close enough to maximize their durability advantage, far enough to maintain firing superiority. To the sides, there was no side. Only crossfire. Loss report, Threx said. His voice had not changed. But everything else had. The tactical officer hesitated. Just for a fraction. 200 lost. Silence. Not shock anymore. Not confusion. Recognition. Threx stood unmoving. He had entered this system with 600 ships. Less than half remained. And the battle was no longer his. Pull back, he ordered. For the first time, retreat. The word moved through the fleet like something unfamiliar. But it was obeyed. Ships attempted to disengage, engines flaring, formations breaking as vessels tried to escape the closing pressure. Some made it. Many didn't. Each second of withdrawal cost more ships. Precise Terran strikes eliminated targets as they turned, as they exposed weaker angles, as they tried, and failed to leave. Eventually, the firing slowed. Stopped. The Dominion fleet drifted at the outer edge of the engagement zone. Broken. Reduced. Alive. The Terran fleet did not pursue. They didn't need to. They had already won. Lyris stared at the sensor board. Dominion ships, remaining, held defensive formation. Terran ships returned to stillness. Not advancing. Not pressing. Waiting. They're letting us go, Reth said. His voice was quiet, uncertain, because this did not follow doctrine. Threx understood it immediately. Not emotionally. Not morally. Strategically. They don't need to destroy us, he said. No one spoke. Because that was worse. Another transmission came through. Same frequency. Same clarity. Same voice. Dominion fleet, the human commander said calmly. No anger. No triumph. Just control. You are no longer a threat within this system. The pause. You may withdraw. Silence. No demand. No negotiation. No conditions. At least, not spoken. Threx stepped forward. For the first time since the battle began, he opened a direct channel. This is Supreme Executor Threx Valen, he said. His voice remained steady. Professional. Intact. I am requesting terms of disengagement. A moment passed. Then the human voice returned. 3 conditions, she said. Simple. Power down all weapons. Reduce propulsion to minimum transit speed. And accept escort to the system boundary. No threat. No enforcement stated. Because it didn't need to be. Threx looked at the tactical display. At the remaining ships. At the Terran fleet surrounding them. Not tightly, not aggressively, but completely. Every possible path accounted for. Every option already calculated. This was not negotiation. This was permission. He made the decision. The only one left. Comply, he said. Across the Dominion fleet, weapons powered down. Energy signatures dropped. Engines slowed. The formation shifted from combat readiness to survival. A single Terran vessel moved forward. Smaller than the others. Faster. It positioned itself just behind the Dominion formation. Not threatening. Not passive. Observing. The Dominion fleet began its retreat. Slow. Controlled. No shots were fired. No pursuit initiated. The Terran fleet held its position. Still, patient. As it had been from the beginning. Lyris watched the distance increase. The Terran ships grew smaller on her display. But they did not disappear. Not completely. Because she knew now. They had never been fully visible to begin with. As the fleet approached the edge of the system, Threx remained standing. Silent. Processing. Not the loss. Not the damage. Something deeper. He opened a final channel. Not required. Not strategic. But necessary. How long, he said. The pause. Then the human commander replied. The first hull was laid 61 years ago. Another pause. We finished the last one 9 months ago. Threx closed his eyes. Just for a moment. You built warships, he said slowly, before you could leave your own system. Yes, she replied. Certain. Why? A longer pause this time. Not hesitation. Consideration. Because we didn't know what was coming, she said. That was the answer. Simple. Complete. Final. Threx said nothing else. He closed the channel. The Dominion fleet reached the edge of the Sol system. Coordinates aligned. FTL drives charged. The Terran escort vessel stopped. Held position. One by one, Dominion ships jumped, vanishing into distorted light, returning to a galaxy that no longer looked the same. The last ship to jump was Threx Valens, and when it was gone, the Terran vessel turned and went home. The Sol system returned to silence. Not empty silence. Not absence. A different kind. The kind that follows something decisive. Something final. The Terran fleet did not celebrate. There were no victory broadcasts. No system-wide announcements. No displays of dominance. The ship simply remained where they had always been. In the dark between planets. Unmoving. Unseen. Ready. On the command deck of the central vessel, Admiral Ilara Voss removed her headset and set it down with deliberate care. No urgency. No release. Just completion. Confirm exit, she said. Last Dominion ship has cleared system boundary, her officer replied. The pause. System secure. The word settled. Not as triumph. As fact. Voss nodded once. Stand down from combat readiness. Around her, the bridge shifted. Not into celebration. Into work. Damage reports. Recovery operations. Survivor tracking. The cost of victory. Because victory always had one. She turned away from the command display and walked toward the observation viewport. Beyond it, the system. Asteroid belt drifting in quiet arcs. Gas giants holding their distant gravity. And far inside, the blue-green planet. Still turning. Still alive. Still untouched. She stood there for a long moment. Not thinking about the battle. Not replaying the decisions. Thinking about something else. Something older. 61 years. Her mother had been there at the beginning. When the program was still a theory. A possibility. A question no one could answer. Are we alone? And more importantly, what if we're not? They had chosen an answer. Not certainty. Preparation. They had built ships no one would ever see. Fought wars that hadn't happened. Solved problems that didn't exist yet. And today, they had been proven right. Behind her, the bridge continued to move. Quiet voices. Measured steps. A crew that had done something extraordinary and was already moving on. Admiral, her comms officer said softly. Conclave channels are requesting contact. Voss didn't turn. Of course they are. Across the galaxy, signals had already begun. Questions. Requests. Reclassifications. The conclave of worlds had existed for centuries. It had categorized civilizations. Ranked them. Measured them. Assigned numbers. And for the first time, the numbers had failed. Emergency sessions were called. Data reviewed. Assumptions dismantled. How did they score a 2? Why was this not detected? What else have we missed? But the real question, the one that mattered, came later. What does this make them now? There was no number for it. No scale. No metric. Because humanity had not changed. It had always been this. Prepared. Not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most advanced. But ready. A new classification was proposed. Not publicly. Not yet. A single word. Prepared. Defined as a species that assumes the worst is coming and builds accordingly. The report included a note. A quiet one. Not all assets have been observed. That part was not explained. On Earth, the reaction was different. There was celebration. Of course. Relief poured into the streets. People laughed. Held each other. And then, the names were read. The crews of the ships that did not come back. Each one. In full. Across every channel. The planet that had been saved went quiet, because victory always had a cost. Uriel Kale stood at the window of her new quarters. The city below moved constantly, but unstructured, alive. Humans argued, with, friend, built, destroyed, rebuilt, a chaotic species. And yet, the same species had spent 61 years in perfect silence. Building, waiting, preparing. She still did not fully understand it, but she understood enough. They were not calm because they were weak. They were calm because they were ready. Her console lit with a message. Conclave update. Her previous objection, now marked, substantiated. She read the word twice, then closed the file. So, life continued, unaware, unchanged. But in the dark between planets, the Terran Deep Fleet remained. Silent, invisible, patient, not as a threat, as a guarantee. Somewhere, far beyond the system, a Dominion Council revised its expansion maps. Routes shifted, targets removed, one direction, permanently avoided, because the lesson had been learned, not through destruction, through demonstration. And across the galaxy, quietly, carefully, civilizations began to reconsider something they had never questioned before. Not how strong is a species, but how ready are they? And in the dark, where nothing appeared to be, the answer waited, as it always had. Ready.